Drew here. I am live from my closet in Savannah, Georgia. Just wanted to pop in at the top of the episode to say thanks for listening, as well as to let y'all know that this episode was recorded on October 9th, 2021. It's taken so long to get this released because we wanted to make sure everything was just right before we put it out to the world. But that being said, we're definitely still learning how this whole podcasting thing works, so bear with us if the audio quality isn't, quite yet up to par with what you're used to. We're going to be experimenting with different audio setups throughout the next few episodes, but we should have everything set up the way we want it soon. I also wanted to go ahead and plug a few things since we forgot to do so during the actual recording. So first, our Instagram is at Oliphants_MC. That's OLIPHAUNTS_MC. Our email is olyphantsmotorclub@gmail.com. Our YouTube is Oliphants Motorcycle Club. My Twitter is at Drew Felt. That's DREWFELT. And Matthew's Twitter is at mute_Matthew. That's MUTE_MATTHEW. Finally, we know that some people prefer to have the podcast in an audio and video format. So if you want to watch me play Minecraft while you listen to the episode, check out our YouTube channel for that. Again, that YouTube channel is Oliphants Motorcycle Club, and the link to that and all of the other plugs will be in the show notes for this episode. I think that's everything, so without further ado, let's get on with the show. Hey guys, welcome to Oliphants Motorcycle Club. I'm one of your hosts, Drew.
And I'm your other host, Matthew. And today we're going to be covering chapters 1 and 2 in Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring. But before we dive into that, Drew, how's it going?
Pretty good. I recently moved to Savannah and never lived there before and didn't really know a whole lot of people when I was moving there. So I've been spending a lot of my time playing Minecraft, and so that's been nice. I've played Minecraft for a while, but I only recently started doing hardcore worlds.
I'm not quite that hardcore.
Yeah, and I used to not understand the appeal of hardcore, which is basically, for those who don't know, so you have your world on Minecraft, and you can play in a survival mode where you can fight monsters and stuff like that, and you can get killed, and if you normally will respawn in the normal difficulty, but in hardcore you lose that world that you've been playing on forever, and so basically you get one chance to play the game in this particular world, and once you get killed by something or you fall and kill yourself by accident or something like that, all of that progress that you just did was lost. And so, obviously because of that added level of you might lose something that you worked really hard on, I used to not understand the appeal of it. You said you haven't done that either, right?
Yeah, I don't think first off, for the people listening at home, I also love Minecraft. I will not pretend to front. However, I play it substantially less than you do.
Yeah,
not
true.
Because I don't play video games, but because my addiction of choice is MLB The Show 20. Or 21.
Hardcore in its own way, I would say.
Oh yeah, for sure. It is repetitive as hell, but we both relate to having a video game where you can just turn off the volume and listen to music or podcasts.
Yeah.
And that's actually why we're recording this, is we're tired of all those ones available.
The ones that don't have us as hosts.
Yeah. I'm a textbook narcissist, and so I would really like to be able to play video game baseball and or Minecraft while listening to myself talk.
Yeah.
But yeah, we each have the same kind of goal of some of our video game playing, which is just having something tactile.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely part of it, and nice to just sort of like work towards a specific goal that you set for yourself, which I feel like both of those games are kind of like that in their own way.
Oh yeah, definitely different. Like I'm going for the home run record.
Yeah.
You're building
Fighting the Ender Dragon.
Yeah. But above all, it's like I feel like a friggin' weirdo whenever I just sit by myself and listen to a podcast.
Yeah.
Like if I'm not driving, I have to have something visual going on, or I feel like I'm losing my mind.
Yeah. Yeah, I love to listen to podcasts, but like I feel like freaking Will Ferrell and Talladega Nights. I don't know what to do with my hands.
That's right. So yeah, but that's a very long-winded intro to saying I don't play nearly as much Minecraft. So
yeah.
Drew, a lot of your special farming and mob killing techniques are totally lost on me. I'm
not particularly good either.
Well,
I've already lost several hardcore worlds since I started playing.
Well,
hardcore.
You're at least not afraid to lose them. I'm so terrified of losing my progress that I don't think I would ever willingly choose.
Yeah. Well, I figured out. I think that this is the best way to like sort of practice the game and like force yourself to make improvements in like the actual playing of the game, because like, you know, if you die only a few days into your first game, then it like, or like only a few days into your first hardcore world, that is, you're gonna realize, oh, I didn't make it that far compared to how far I am used to getting not playing on hardcore.
Yeah.
And so like it's been nice to like, first of all, it makes me a lot more like cautious, which sometimes I need in that game, honestly. Yeah. But yeah, I haven't even like made it to the Nether yet playing like this. But it's nice to like be forced to sort of improve. Yeah. If I want to do the stuff that I like doing in the game, you know? Yeah.
I imagine that it makes you a lot better at not just rushing headfirst into a room with like 3 zombies when it's like within a day or two of starting.
Yeah, I like that the stakes are higher because it makes me try harder for sure. Yeah, and honestly, like the one of the more fun aspects of the game is almost always the beginning of a game, like a new world on the game, as opposed to one that you've been playing on for like several years or something like that. I've never gotten that far, but like,
see also,
I get tired of my world eventually.
Yeah, see also every game of Civ that either of us have ever started.
Yeah.
It's like you play the first 200 turns, it's like, I'm out.
Exactly. Somebody's mad at me and I just...
Probably Montezuma.
So true.
That bastard. So true, bestie.
So true, bastard.
Well, any particular... I think one thing that I'm interested in with hardcore, and one reason why I avoid it, is like, as bad as I am at coming up with structures to build in Minecraft, I really do like being able to add an add-on to like a base or a building that I've made. Have you found that that's either changed your priorities, or like have you taken on any challenges despite the pressure of just having one life before you lose it all?
A little bit. So I'm definitely not really changing my priorities in terms of like maybe spending less time working on my base.
Yeah.
Because I'm trying to like get to a finish line quicker or something like that. But it does I think it honestly makes me a little bit more likely to do some of the stuff that I'd consider kind of like mundane. You know, like I don't need to travel across these plains that I live in to track down that one donkey I saw because I want a donkey.
Yeah.
But it's at least something I know I can manage doing with where I'm at in the game. And so it makes it so that I have a donkey earlier in the game, you know, or something like that, where it's like, this will definitely be helpful, and it is no matter the play style that you're doing for Minecraft, but I don't know. It just makes it so that I'm more likely to do those things earlier on,
Gotcha.
I think. And it's nice.
Yeah. I definitely relate. I think you said earlier, like, going off of how likely you are to kind of get like burnt out on some of the more mundane aspects.
Mm-hmm.
That is definitely a huge thing for me. Is like I get to the point, even on a world where I'm working towards building some structure where I need like a lot of a particular resource.
Yeah.
I get so burnt out on resource farming.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's all Minecraft is for the most part. It's like figuring out the best way to like hoard as many resources as possible.
Yeah.
And then make like really
Low-key-
creative builds.
Low-key problematic.
It's okay. You're like the only sentient being in those games.
Is there like a socialism mod for Minecraft? Oh, on that note, man, nothing hits me harder than the guilt and shame of killing pixelated animals in Minecraft.
Yeah, I know, right?
We're both well, I guess technically we're both pescatarians.
Yeah.
When people ask, I usually say vegetarian, just because
Yeah.
functionally, I
tend
pretty
to
much
prefer a veggie option.
Yeah, it's just that. Well, Drew now lives in Savannah, where there's all kinds of seafood available.
Yeah.
And I've got family in Brunswick, South Georgia, and New Orleans.
Yeah.
And so it is incredibly difficult to avoid it, like at family gatherings.
Yeah. And like I'm not gonna deprive myself of good seafood if it's like immediately available to me.
Yeah. I
But
we
I'm
don't
also
have
not
to get
gonna
into
seek
the
it out. Like if I was a meat eater, I would seek out meat more frequently.
Yeah, it's definitely a passive thing, I think, for both of us, where it's like, I don't really hold it against people that eat meat, but I think people should eat less meat. So my version of that is 90% of the time being vegetarian, and then like 4 or 5 times a year, like allowing myself to have shrimp or something.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean I'm like oblivious to the environmental impacts of it, because that, I think, for both of us is a big reason why we stopped eating like red meat and pork especially.
Yeah.
But hey, nobody's perfect, and it's not about being perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So it's about doing the best you can most of the time.
Yeah.
At least I think if more people approach it that way, I think we would probably have a healthier relationship with food choice. Anyway, I don't know how we got on that from Minecraft. Oh, it was killing innocent animals.
Yeah. It's okay. All their decisions are based on random number generators, I think. So.
Well, Drew, we live in a simulation too, so.
Damn.
Yeah. So technically.
Yeah.
You're a murderer.
And on that note, how are things looking in the Shire, Matthew?
Hey, they're looking pretty good. They're looking pretty festive around chapter 1 or so.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's go ahead and get into it.
Yeah.
Just a reminder for those of you who maybe didn't join us for our first episode or haven't gotten around to listening to it, we're reading through a couple of chapters a week in Lord of the Rings. We're going to try and do all the books, maybe even go into like The Hobbit or some of the...
Yeah. Hey, I'd if people wanted it, I'd try the Silmarillion, but I think I'd probably read The Hobbit first.
Yeah. From what I've heard, the Silmarillion is pretty dense, but
yeah.
Hey, we do it for you people. we do it for the good people of the world who want to hear two jerk-offs talk about Lord of the Rings. But we're gonna record pretty much bi-weekly, but put episodes out weekly. Mm-hmm. So just a reminder that nothing that we're going to discuss, even in our personal lives, is really time-based. So don't feel like you gotta schedule this, but we're gonna work our way through week by week, and feel free to read along.
Yeah, it's intended to be softly intended to be a read along, but you know, definitely not required. Hopefully enjoy this.
Because let's be real, most people who self-describe as Lord of the Rings fans are either enormous fans or have at least seen the movies. Right. I would wager to guess there's not many people who would try a podcast like this, like without knowing anything about Lord of the Rings. So we're gonna spoon feed some stuff, but
Yeah.
it's just so if you're not familiar with the books and the pacing and like maybe some differences between the movies and the books, you'll be able to get those here.
Yeah, but also then it's very possible that it seems like we're spoon feeding certain information that seems like obvious, like who wouldn't know this, but also it's kind of our first time going through this, really. So
oh yeah,
like some things, like definitely, like first time I read this, or yeah, when I was reading this first chapter, I did not know that like it takes place, the first 2 chapters take place over the course of like 15 to 30 years.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We'll get into that.
It seems like it's like over the course of an afternoon in the movie. You know?
Yeah. We'll definitely, when we get to that point in the book, we'll definitely talk about that for a while, because that was one of my major notes that I wrote down as like a huge departure from the films. But in general, yeah, like we want to make sure we're setting up even characters that are pretty well known in like the cultural consciousness. Like I feel like Gollum and Gandalf and Frodo to a certain extent are like fairly well known.
Yeah.
There are some minor characters that anyone who's seen or read Lord of the Rings, I mean, like
Near.
Yeah, Merry and Pippin. the cherry tomatoes from Return of the King. No, I mean,
there's guy that was the tomato in VeggieTales.
Damn, for real?
Yeah,
that's crazy. Bob the Tomato, man.
Yeah.
I need to check out his IMDb.
Yeah.
I've heard his average rating is not great, but the results speak for themselves.
Yeah, he's got highs and lows in his career.
That's right.
Sure.
That's right. But yeah, so like we're a lot of the time going to be doing stuff for our own edification, and also just to make sure that we don't gloss over someone who will be like repeatedly featured in the chapters to come. Because a few people just kind of, they make like minor appearances really early
I hope
on.
this Gaffer character comes back.
I know. Come on. And also the best boy. Man, well, they've got so many movie set people on. No wonder they made it into a film.
Key grip.
Yeah. Oh goodness, those hobbits. They every last one of them went to NYU film school.
I'm gonna say the Shire's sort of like the Georgia of Middle Earth. They just like their tax laws make it so that like movies just do really well.
Yeah,
if they're filmed here.
We didn't cover it in the prologue, but there's actually multiple paragraphs about the historically lenient tax code that allows for movie theater productions to come into the Shire. They're kind of trying to be like the Empire State of Middle Earth, I would say, or Hollywood South. The technology really needs to catch up, but surely you think. While we're on this, do you think they have like daguerreotypes in Middle Earth, or do they have them? Because I don't think they mentioned them. But like, do you think they have the capacity to have such a thing?
I bet if they put their minds to it, they could figure something out like that. I bet like
at least 10 types.
Could be. I feel like if they ever needed something like that, the writer would have been like. No, they were just so good at sculpting that they could just sculpt a picture.
Yeah. They could actually sculpt one of the moving pictures from Harry Potter.
Whoa.
How cool would it be to have a crossover episode
Whoa.
between Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter?
Whoa.
Screw this podcast. We're going in a new direction, people.
Neville is the heir to the Longbottom Leaf fortune.
Yes. How has no one picked up on this? Slash, did she just rip that off?
Like the name?
Yeah.
Could be. She'd probably say it was an homage or something, but like,
folks,
we can't trust J.K. Rowling anyway.
Folks, we don't like J.K. Rowling in this household.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's a similar thing. It's crazy to me to say that like I almost like J.K. Rowling less than J.R.R. Tolkien for the more problematic aspects of their like actual lives, but like. It somehow she has become worse.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just because we're seeing like the opinions of her and her own actions unfurl still. Like, she's
Yeah.
not done being like alive, so
True,
there's still more
true.
stuff that's gonna happen with her, and she's probably gonna be canceled even more at some point, honestly.
Yeah.
Or do something cancelable
Hey,
again, I guess.
JK, you got plenty of time.
Yeah. She speaks European Portuguese.
What?
Come on.
Yeah,
Brazilian Portuguese.
that's what I'm saying. Oh, while we're on the subject, folks, we got someone who's bilingue, or however you say it in this house. How do you say it in Portuguese?
I think it would probably be bilingual. I don't know if it would be bilingue or like bilingual. I'm not sure, actually.
Who's to say? But Drew here knows some Portuguese, or Brazilian as I call it, and parody. But I just know a little bit of Spanish, so maybe we should. It'd be cool
What?
if we got some versions of Lord of the Rings in some different languages.
Yeah, that would be fun. I would like to
maybe just in our personal lives. I don't know how much fun that would be over the information superhighway.
Sign off if you want us to do an entire podcast in a language that we aren't as good at speaking in.
Yeah. Well, I think we started to kind of lose the thread there a little bit.
Yeah.
But thankfully, I know we haven't started chapter 1 yet, so we're still set up for success.
That's true.
People. This is going to be a classic example of the kinds of rabbit holes that we're going to go down on this show.
Hobbit holes.
Hobbit holes, too. Hey.
Who knows?
We would you say that we both, our brains work very similarly in that our approach to basically everything is like word association?
Yeah, that's definitely like a key pillar of my sense of humor.
Yeah. So a lot of times we are just gonna make boneheaded connections between like certain words in this, like that are used in the book, and like internet humor.
Yeah.
We'll see. We'll try and rein it in as much as we can for y'all. But hey, drop a comment down below. Leave 5 stars. Let us know if you like the level of humor that we're operating at. You won't hurt our feelings. Well, do you want to go ahead and jump into chapter 1?
Yeah. So I appreciated that the beginning of the chapter gave us a nice looking map.
Oh yeah.
It is.
Again, we talked about this in the first episode, but it is insanely helpful, especially with something that features so many locations that the characters travel to have a mental picture of relative scale, like placement of different things in relation to one another, so you're not constantly flipping back and forth.
Yeah.
But
this point B was so far from point A, and now I can compare where point C is in comparison to both of those places. And it's just like, it helps, especially because like the whole thing about these books is like they're just going from one place to another. Yeah,
it is. It is definitely the story of many journeys all kind of connected together. So it can get. I understand. I think it gets intentionally dull in places and intentionally very exciting in others, because that's just the nature of going on. Like, I mean, this is what essentially amounts to an expedition,
right?
So chapter 1 got the nice map in the preamble.
Yeah, it's a part of the Shire, and I like that it talks about shows us the farthings and whatnot. Yeah, it's a good looking map.
Yeah,
he did a good job, that Tolkien. Also, while I'm thinking about it, I'm definitely, I don't know about you, Matthew, but I'm going to alternate between saying Tolkien and Tolkien and everything in between.
There is nothing that I incorporate more fully into my life than pronouncing things multiple ways.
Yeah. Matthew's also going to say dwarf.
Yeah. Oh, Jesus.
Address it now.
So again, believe it or not, we do have girlfriends, despite having just talked about Minecraft, baseball, video games, and Lord of the Rings for about 20 minutes. my girlfriend gives me so much hell because, and I don't know why, I don't know how, but instead of saying dwarf, like I think one is supposed to, I tend to naturally say dwarf. I think it is a little bit of a southernism, maybe, just maybe.
Could be.
But I think it's a southernism in that, like, how often are most people saying the word dwarf?
Yeah.
So, like, dwarf. It just feels, especially because the older I've gotten, I've slipped into more and more of a southern drawl.
Right.
I think I've also de-emphasized the necessity of pronouncing things quote unquote correctly.
Yeah.
So I let myself say dwarf.
Yeah,
I'm gonna say dwarf.
I am pro dwarf.
DORF dwarf.
This is a pro dwarf podcast.
Hey.
Yeah.
Hey. And that's as good a segue as any into. There's a whole section about Hodorf. I'm pretty sure that's this book, right? But so chapter 1, a long expected party.
Yeah.
Tell the people a little bit, set the scene a little bit, and then we'll get into kind of the plot of the chapter.
So we talked a little bit in the last episode about who Bilbo Baggins is. He's the cousin of Frodo, who's I guess he's the main protagonist in like the classical definition of protagonist.
I've always thought of him more as a foil person. Yeah, he's the main guy. Pretty more or less.
Yeah, he's the Harry.
Yeah. Somehow is the least interesting character and the main character, which
maybe he's more interesting in the books, though. We'll see.
Yeah, maybe so.
Not that optimistic that he will be,
No,
though.
he seems pretty flat so far, to be honest. But we'll get into it.
But he's already more interesting because when he goes on his journey, he's like 79 or something.
No,
he's like 50 something.
Yeah. Okay, so let's just go ahead and get that out of the way. In the movies, I think you even said it in as many words. In the movies, the time between Bilbo's party, which is the long expected party, the time between this party and the quest that is the Lord of the Rings appears to be like 3.5 hours or so.
Yeah.
In the book, straight up, it is 17 years between Bilbo's birthday party / when Frodo gets the ring and when they actually even just start to have like
when Frodo even thinks
notion
about what the ring is about.
Yeah, for over a decade, this man is just like, man, I'd really like to leave the Shire and go across the river.
Sucks that I can't. Sucks that I have no reason to.
Yeah. But
sucks I gotta keep watching over this ring in an envelope that my cousin gave me.
But we're getting a little ahead of ourselves.
Yeah, we are.
Bilbo is living in the Shire.
Yep. So he's still living in his house of Bag End, which is the name that Bilbo lives in Hobbiton, which is the name of I guess it's the town.
Yeah.
I don't know. We should know the proper terminology after the prologue.
Yeah, I know. But it was mostly genealogy and pipeweed, so what do you expect of me?
And yeah, Bilbo is planning for his 111th, or as they say it, 111st birthday party.
And Drew, you know what? Bilbo? This man doesn't look a day over 11.
For real. No, they describe him, and we know that it is because of his possession of the One Ring. Or I guess we don't quite know yet if we were only reading the book, I guess we wouldn't necessarily know that. But we know that because of, like, it's the same reason he's that age in the movies. The ring keeps him a certain age. Yeah. Or looking a certain age, and, like, is functionally immortal in a lot of ways.
But as he describes it, and like I think we see this with Gollum, and we'll talk about this when Gollum enters the story in earnest, but it does kind of hollow you out. So he likens it in the book and the movie. I think it's almost verbatim, like as butter being spread over too much bread. Like it just you feel like stretched thin And so Bilbo really longs to leave the Shire and maybe not get into trouble quite like he did in the events of The Hobbit, but certainly explore the world, see maybe some of the old characters and individuals that he remembered from his traveling days, and to see like mountains again. I think is the big thing. Hey, relatable content. But so he lives in a fairly nice hobbit hole in Hobbiton.
Yeah.
He's gosh, his people's perception of him is kind of all over the place. Like, I think they recognize that he's more, maybe not
they definitely
successful.
Think of him as eccentric.
Yeah, like he's recognized as having packed a lot more living into one life than most hobbits certainly are used to.
Yeah.
But also people kind of have misgivings about his like odd, like he'll be somewhat he won't be very forthcoming about a lot of the details of what he's been through, and I think he kind of likes being mysterious in that respect.
Yeah, he definitely sort of enjoys that, like the fact that people have different perceptions about him. It seems like across the board, for the most part, the people that actually interact with him on a regular basis think he's a really nice guy.
Yeah,
you know, like the gaffer who's his gardener, is like he's a super awesome guy and would like defend him to anybody. Yeah, it says at 90 he was much the same as at 50. At 99 they began to call him well preserved, but unchanged would have been nearer the mark.
It's all that plastic surgery. You just take the Brandywine Bridge over to Bree. Hey, they'll hook you up, man. He's got them concrete ass implants. Yeah, Tolkien doesn't talk about this very much, but Bilbo is caked up. It is. It's actually it gets in the way. It renders him immobile quite a bit of the time.
You should see some of the illustrations.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Everyone's seen like some of like the hand drawn map of Middle Earth, or like Tolkien's drawing of Smaug. His Rule 34 of Bilbo is something. You know, it's a pièce de résistance.
And so what else is going on in this chapter after it starts talking about Bilbo's birthday?
Well, basically, I mean, we touched on Bilbo is kind of getting, he explicitly talks about it later in the chapter, but the narrator kind of lays out that Bilbo is kind of yearning to get back out into Middle Earth and see the world and adventure some more. And I think like the kind of quiet pastoral life in Hobbiton he really enjoys, but has like, because he has had such a long life, he's kind of grown weary of it.
Mm-hmm.
But because it is his 111st birthday, and all hobbits love an excuse, as buttoned up as they have the capacity to be. They love a damn festival, man.
Yeah.
And Bilbo is about to celebrate his 111st birthday and paint the damn town red.
Oh yeah.
The book describes him as having bought out the storehouses for pretty much anything you can think of for like miles.
Hopefully there's
around.
Not like a major drought or something that happens.
I know. Like Bilbo is single-handedly threatening the Hobbit economy. He is hoarding the supply of ale and cake batter and tent poles and all kinds of stuff.
Oh yeah.
But it basically sounds like they're having like literally either like a day long or multiple day, like just super festival.
Yeah.
Like everyone's invited, and even people who aren't invited.
Freaking gaff, as our Scottish friends would call it.
Yeah. Bread and circuses.
Call the gaffer.
But everyone is coming, essentially. And so this is going to be an enormous event. But the book kind of opens with the preliminary stages of that event being set up. So there's the famous sign posted on the fence in front of his hobbit hole, no admittance except on party business. Like he's got neighbors and relations of all sorts dropping in on him to ask questions, to pester him, and he's not interested.
Yeah.
But this is also we're introduced to Frodo, his cousin, correct?
Yeah. Frodo was he was orphaned. His parents both like drowned in like a boating accident. It did say most hobbits don't know how to swim. So that's just something interesting that might come up later. I have no idea if it actually will or not. But
oh yeah, because towards the end of Fellowship, Sam and Frodo in the water,
or they're not swimming, I guess. But yeah, so Frodo was orphaned and was related to Bilbo, and Bilbo like sort of took to him and ended up naming Frodo his heir.
Yeah, much to the frustration of some of Frodo's more proximate relations.
Yeah, namely the Sackville Bagginses.
Yeah, the Sackville Bagginses, they are pissed guys about this. They're about to punch a hole in some drywall over this.
Yeah.
Do not give them any Four Loko.
Yeah, they're wilding out for sure.
But consequently, Frodo and Bilbo are very close. It doesn't really go into much about the nature of Frodo and Bilbo's, like what their relationship functionally looks like most of the time.
Seems like they just hang out.
Yeah, but
smoke pipe weed together.
It's clear that Frodo is intimately involved in helping prep the birthday party, if nothing else. So it seems like he trusts him, given how little he wants to interact with some of his family members.
Yeah. I did make note of the fact. So the gaffer that I've been mentioning, Bilbo calls him Master Hamfast. I just thought that was funny.
Got that fast ham, man.
I don't know what that's supposed to mean.
There's no telling.
Hamfast.
Maybe it's like a steadfast, but like you really stand behind ham. Who's to say?
I was loving these Hobbit names.
Me too.
Proudfoot. I love all the foot iconography in their names.
You can tell it's part of the Hobbit culture.
Yeah. Brantlebottle.
Do you think Brantlebottle for the unengaged is the only thing I could think of as a last name for my D&D character in high school?
I stand by it. It's funny.
It is funny. I like it more and more as time goes by.
Yeah.
What I was going to ask on a related note, do you think, let's be real, looking around to make sure no one's listening, do you think these hobbits would send feet pics in the year of our Lord 2021?
I was just thinking about like what hobbits would look like in the modern day. I feel like there would be a lot of like, in like the early aughts, late 90s, there would have been a lot of like suburban hobbits that like were really into like pop punk.
They're really into tech decks when they're younger.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fallout Boy, but for hobbits.
And so, I think that there would be some hobbits that, actually, now that I think about it, there would be some hobbits that were sending some feet pics, and there would be some hobbits that were like really into feet pics themselves.
Do you think there would be people, because it's well documented how...
do you think there would be like other races in the Middle Earth world that were like, they were like really into hobbit feet pics? Probably.
Probably.
Dang.
I was gonna say, like, I feel like there's no mystery to them, which might be part of it.
Yeah.
Because they're not sneakerheads, they're not hype beasts. They just got these hairy, leathery ass feet, just walking around uncovered for all the world to see.
Yeah.
So maybe that air of mystery taken out of it renders them not an object of sexual attraction. But who's to say, really?
Yeah.
Hey, in the absence of any input from the author, we'll just have to assume that we're correct.
Yeah. 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 I bet there would be, in later years, there would be like a large-ish amount of toxically masculine dwarves.
Oh, absolutely.
That would take to hobbit women.
Like,
because they apparently the dwarf women look quite a lot like dwarf men.
This is true.
And so it's like you'd think some would get tired.
You know what? Now that you mention it, I used to think that they just sprouted up out of the ground. I guarantee you that dwarves in the year 2021 would be rise and grind ass people. Like they would be taking like selfies of how swole they were at the gym.
Yeah.
But skipping leg
They'd be
day.
like mining for supplements.
Yeah. Yeah. They're at like GNC, just like combing through all the different vitamins.
What does GNC stand for? I always read that logo as General Noder Company, but I know that's not right.
I think it's General Nutrition Company.
Oh.
But yell at me in the comments if I'm wrong about that. I wouldn't know. But yeah, you just know because you know that they're natural born sprinters, but not necessarily like endurance runners. You just know they're skipping leg day. There's no two ways to it.
Yeah, for sure. They do. They're not doing cardio at all.
No. So we've met Bilbo, we've met Frodo. A lot of this chapter is really just describing the drama between different like families in Hobbiton and like the different like, especially the different like Baggins relations. And I gotta tell you, I get immense secondhand stress from like family members holding grudges.
Yeah,
I would not be able to cut it in this society.
Oh yeah, same.
And also going back to how much supplies was required and how big of an event Bilbo's 111st birthday is. Did you notice that there's like way more planning going into this than the actual convening of the Fellowship of the Ring?
Yeah.
Like somehow they put more thought into this party than like the scheme of the entire series of books.
Yeah, I guess we'll see, but like that seems like it's just always a coincidence that they're all there at the same time.
Yeah.
I probably just am not paying attention enough when they're showing up in the movie.
Yeah. And shortly thereafter, and kind of as this is going on, the wizard Gandalf the Grey, who is also in The Hobbit for the unengaged, he rides into town, and he has not been by in some time, in several years it sounds like, but he is famous for bringing an assortment of, I would say, like magical fireworks that are incredibly popular.
Usually
especially
just say fireworks, but like I feel like it's coming from Gandalf. We can assume it's magic.
Yeah. And so he is loved by everyone for his the party tricks that he brings to the table, I would call them.
Yeah.
Especially the Hobbit children.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, one of the ones, it mentions this both in the book and it's shown in the movie, this dragon firework that looks like it's swooping towards the crowd and is like fairly realistic.
Yeah.
Do you think that was a lot like the first movie where the train's coming at the audience?
Yeah.
Like all these people just running for their lives? Like, hey, you idiots, it's a firework dragon, not a real dragon.
Yeah. They don't know.
Yay.
These Shire folk have never even seen a real dragon, most of them.
That's true.
It mentioned, talking about the fireworks, so it mentioned that something like it makes sense that Gandalf would be good at fireworks because he has like an affinity for fire and white magic.
Yeah.
I didn't realize, I mean, I guess he does, like that's sort of his thing, but I didn't realize that was like, I just thought his thing was just he's a generic wizard.
Yeah, I would, if I had, just because we've played,
it's like his specialty though,
Yeah, and we've played some video games and read other stories where magic is involved, and it's pretty common for there to be an area of magical emphasis. But honestly, having most of my frame of reference with it being the movies, if you'd have pressed me, I would have said light-based magic. So I guess fire's not that far off.
It said fire and light.
Right, but in the movies, he's usually illuminating. He seems more like a generic wizard with some light-based powers.
Or it's just his specialty. I mean, he's also kind of the prototype for a lot of fantasy wizard tropes. So, you know, his specialty just seems like the default,
Yeah.
I guess,
I think we're both,
as opposed to like Radagast, where it's like, this guy's like nature
yeah.
specific.
I think really, but what we're mostly getting at though is that he is portrayed as like a fire expert much more so in the book, like explicitly.
Yeah.
Never would have painted him as a pyromaniac.
Yeah.
But yet here we are.
Yeah. And I feel like if there was one guy that could, because like you'd think he would be able to whip up some kind of fire
Truly.
that could destroy the ring, you know?
That's what I'm saying.
Because like I get it if it's just Mount Doom,
yeah,
that can destroy the ring, but then also dragons,
yeah,
like any dragon can apparently destroy the ring.
Yeah, how are we not looking for dragons? That
Yeah.
I also thought about that when I was reading. That kind of
like-
pissed me off.
It kind of makes sense because it's like dragons are their own thing, and they're like, you know, supposed to be these like hyper powerful beings, but I don't know. It's like it's a weird exception to make. And
Yeah.
then nobody else can do it.
And honestly, you know what? You know how like it's a really common. It's annoying as hell, but like it's a really common trope for people to be like eagle truthers in the Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
I am now a dragon truther in the Lord of the Rings. It's like, how was going to Mount Doom any easier than like Gandalf looking up in the phone book where some dragons
Yeah.
were?
I think it mentioned that like they're all gone is basically what it alluded to,
Yeah.
but like, are we sure they're all gone?
Yeah.
You know, like did we think that the Balrog was all gone?
Yeah.
Or
And
Balrogs?
and damn, it took Gandalf like a decade to
I
like
know.
look up
I mean,
stuff.
maybe that's true. He did a lot of pre-work before he talked to Frodo about the
Yeah.
ring. And it's like maybe he like part of what he did was going to be looking for the ring.
Yeah.
Or he found the ring looking for a dragon, and you just double check and triple checking even that there aren't dragons around.
So far, just getting back to the plot a little bit, we've met Bilbo,
Yeah.
71st birthday party. We met Frodo. Gandalf is in town for the party. We're throwing the party. Everybody's having a good time, you know,
Yeah.
eating, drinking, and being merry, but not.
Or Pippin.
But yeah, could be both, perhaps. But it's in the midst of the party, and all of a sudden, Bilbo gets up to give a speech.
Mhm.
And although this will be revealed to the partygoers, it's clear that he has ulterior motives at play beyond just thanking people for coming that relate to his desire to get out of the Shire.
Mhm.
So he essentially gets up, thanks everybody, right? And he essentially tells them, I intend to be going now. I will not be coming back. Goodbye. And then places the ring on his finger, and like a flash and a puff of smoke, and he's invisible. Isn't this interesting? That there's like Gandalf added of like a visual in the book.
Yeah.
Did
Yeah.
you catch that?
Yeah. I didn't. Was Frodo like in on it from the beginning in the movie?
I don't think so,
Yeah, I don't think he is either.
because I think he knows that Bilbo is capable of getting up to tricks,
Yeah.
and so isn't surprised by it.
Right.
But I don't think because Gandalf has to explain the ring. Like, I understand, like, obviously, like, the problematic nature of it, but
Yeah.
I think Frodo might even have a limited understanding of, like, what the power of the ring even is. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I also wanted to bring up in the speech, he says, I don't know half of you half as well as I should like, and I like less than half of you half as well as you deserve. And it wasn't until I could see this sentence written down that I could really work out the like syntactic structure of what he's trying
Did you have to map it out?
What the message he's trying to say. But
it
it's
is-
actually, it's a compliment.
Yeah. I think it is intentionally, like, I don't think you need to understand what he's saying to, like, because like it almost illuminates the kind of level of confusion that the hobbits have to hearing it.
Mhm.
Like they, given their like mistrust of him, do not necessarily interpret it positively, even though he's essentially saying like, I would like to know some of you better.
Yeah.
in the end. But regardless, X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can definitely tell there's some hobbits in the crowd that are like, screw you, man.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, and I think that probably goes back to his sort of enjoyment of not being like universally liked.
Mm-hmm.
Is like his willingness to say something that's deceptively vague.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
That's just interesting thing about, I don't know. It's just like I always think about that, and I always like try to work out what is said.
Yeah. You know, I'm more of a proud foot, proud feet man myself. That's a good bit of dialogue. That's in both movie and book. So
yeah.
But anyways, so Bilbo gives his speech. He with the ring on, he is able to slip out undetected and return to his hobbit hole.
Yeah.
Where Gandalf meets him, and in the movie he seems like pretty not upset, but he's like borderline frustrated with Bilbo.
Yeah.
For like doing it that way and like hurting, like messing with the other hobbits. Essentially, he seems 100% on board.
Yeah.
In the book, I think partially because he doesn't understand the full ramifications of the ring yet.
Yeah. Gandalf is a lot more like stern
in the movies,
in the books, I think.
In the books, you're saying?
Yeah, I got one thing in the next chapter that I'll talk about when we get to that. But
yeah, I think it's compared to the movies. In the movie, this whole first section, he goes from being very jolly, like he's just kind of like a happy, playful kind of presence, to being like kind of like a little bit stern, almost like a parental figure.
Right.
Whereas in the books, he kind of starts out and like stays pretty evenly at being like pretty skeptical, I would say.
Yeah.
So it's a little more, it's less all over the place.
Yeah.
But I definitely can see what you mean. He is kind of the academic of the bunch. Yeah. So he's a little bit more like stern, I would say.
Yeah.
And another thing I wanted to bring up in general, and we talked about this with the speech, but it was really impressive to me how faithful to the dialogue the Lord of the Rings movies are.
I think that they intentionally did that, especially for the very beginning of these movies. I mean, like, it has such a unique way of writing dialogue. Yeah. That like it's pretty, like, I think that the filmmakers throughout the movies were probably drawn to including as many direct quotes as possible. Yeah. But I think that especially at the beginning when it's like, you know, like prior to these movies coming out, I'm sure people were like incredibly excited to see the very first like high quality film adaptations of these books that they already loved, you know? Yeah. And so like they were gonna be really comparing it to the books in the beginning, and then once they become sold on the movie a little bit more by hearing recognizable things, I think that the filmmakers bought them some freedom to deviate more, because at the beginning they really sold the audience on like, this is the same thing that you love already, you know? I think that Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy kind of took a page out of the Lord of the Rings filmmakers book in that way, because it's, you can definitely, in the beginning, it's like basically you're reading like a novelization of the movie when you're reading the first couple of chapters of that book, you know?
If memory serves, there's not a whole lot else that happens at the end of chapter 1.
Not from what I can tell. Sackville Bagginses it spends a lot of time talking about what the presents were, the birthday presents were. Yeah. Because like in Hobbit culture, when it's your birthday, you give people presents rather than receive them.
Mm-hmm.
So it talks about all the presents that Bilbo gave to his relatives, and a lot of them were like underhanded jokes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So those were pretty funny.
But after Bilbo departs, it is so funny how many of his relatives keep trying to steal his stuff.
Yeah, I was thinking about, like, this is very similar to the beginning of The Hobbit, in that it's like a great deal of the opening scenes of the book are just like people being very rude to the main character in their own home.
Yes. And it is very obvious that these hobbits, like, if you're just not in the neighborhood for like a week, they will be like, well, he must be dead. Let's take all the stuff.
Yeah.
Which, not going to say I respect it, but like, they're at least pragmatic.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they're just not used to people going out of town, I guess.
Yeah. They're like, well, vacation. Well, we're grinding. We're like those dwarves. Or dwarfs, excuse me. Now that I've called attention to it, I've stopped saying dwarf. But I'm a proud dwarf sayer, so I need to stick to that.
Dwarfer.
Need to return to my roots.
Well, is there anything else you wanted to talk about in chapter 1?
Just kind of broad strokes. It is striking to me, and we talked about this at length. Oh, go ahead.
I did think Gandalf also confronts Bilbo about, like, you're gonna leave the ring, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because he's leaving everything to Frodo.
And Bilbo's like...
He said he's gonna leave the ring, but Bilbo's like kind of thinking like, well, maybe I bring it. You know, it's a pretty good ring.
He's getting real testy.
Yeah.
He's like, why should I? It's
so
mine.
So Gandalf follows him back to Bag End when he leaves, or like when he has his disappearance after the speech. And so, but he eventually convinces Bilbo that he needs to do that because, like, it's just, you know, like this is really, we're seeing the first signs of like true corruption of Bilbo by the ring.
And like we said, hobbits, just something about their nature makes them a little bit less susceptible to it.
Yeah.
So rather than it being like all consuming, like for Gollum in The Hobbit and later on in The Lord of the Rings, it's more of just kind of, he really just gets kind of like, what's the word I'm looking for? Just kind of like testy.
Yeah, like he really wants it, you can tell, but like, as opposed to Gollum, who, like, upon meeting any sort of initial resistance towards keeping it, after only having seen it for like 5 minutes, like immediately resorts to killing his very close relative.
To be fair, it was his birthday.
It was his birthday. You're right.
we can have a little bit of assault and battery and or murder on our birthdays, right?
Yeah, but like Bilbo was like, I mean, after like his crankiness, he was kind of fine with giving it up.
Yeah. So that's basically everything that happens in chapter 1. You asked if there was any kind of like final thoughts on this chapter. Not so much the content, because I think we covered pretty much everything, but it was interesting to me, just kind of talking broad strokes about Tolkien's writing style.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, we saw how dry and academic it can be in the prologue.
Mm-hmm.
It is very fast-paced for how descriptive it is, I will say.
Yeah.
However, I don't know if this is just a personal thing or what. I tend to have difficulty discerning like emotional tone unless it's pretty explicitly written out.
Right.
And I kind of struggled with reading characters' reactions to things. I think he writes characters that are not flat in any way, but he kind of wants you to internally interpret how they're like putting the things that they're saying.
Yeah.
Like he won't elaborate on like tone of voice a lot.
Yeah.
Which I'm fine with.
Yeah.
But it did make it read a little bit more like a script.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, I've noticed before it's a little bit hard to figure out his intention with a particular line of dialogue.
Yeah.
With like, what is he trying to convey about the character when they say this?
Yeah, and so I think, like a little bit earlier we were talking about Gandalf, and like I see exactly what you mean with him being a little bit more stern than in the movies. But I literally wrote a note down that says he seems more passive to me. So it's like those aren't mutually exclusive necessarily, but it's like we had two totally different reads on Gandalf just based on like our interpretation of like line delivery.
Well, so my interpretation of Gandalf is largely informed by one quote in chapter 2. So I guess since we're talking about it, I can go ahead and bring it up.
We're not there yet.
So we'll talk about the other stuff in chapter 2 eventually, but there's one part where he's talking about the ring and how it works to Frodo. And where is it? I'm flipping through the book right now. So
I believe you're going to want to look somewhere in the range of the like page 40.
Yeah.
44, 45. That's when Gandalf returns.
Yeah.
You want to just save it till we get there?
Yeah, that's fine. I'll keep looking for it.
So moving from chapter 1 to chapter 2, I think we talked about it up top, but goodness gracious, it is almost 20 years before anything of like I think it's one sentence that covers
it's just
it.
like 12 years past.
Yeah. So it makes sense contextually, and we'll get into it, but
especially when you're coming into it picturing like 20-something-year-old Elijah Wood.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Bilbo, by the time that anything of real consequence happens between Bilbo departing the Shire after his birthday party and like the story beginning in earnest, Frodo goes from being 33 years old, which mind you is like incredibly young for a hobbit.
Yeah, it's that's like the big, like literally when you come of age as a hobbit.
Yeah. I don't think he's any younger than like 50 years old in the events of The Lord of the Rings. Yeah. And so, you're right. I am just exclusively thinking of Elijah Wood's face and picturing him being like an old man playing Frodo.
And to be fair, he doesn't look as old as he is because he has the ring and is looking quote unquote well preserved.
Yeah. But even still, like Elijah Wood is a young person to be playing
Elijah
Frodo
Wood,
to begin
when he
with.
was playing Frodo, didn't look 33 years old.
So essentially, Frodo now has possession of the ring. It's just in an envelope that he's safekeeping.
Honestly, I don't even know why he does wait as long. I guess it's because like he doesn't decide to leave until Gandalf approaches him and is like, hey, you need to destroy this ring. But from a storytelling perspective, it kind of doesn't really add anything that Gandalf has to leave after the party and learn more about the ring before he decides to. Like, it could just have been, as it is in the movies, it could have just been like, Gandalf already knows everything about the ring.
And like, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it is the exact same setup as in the book, just on a much more condensed time scale. So like in the movies, it's presented as Gandalf knows some things about it, but seeks counsel from Saruman.
Does it have that in there in the beginning?
I believe so. Essentially, it might not be Saruman, but he is reading up on a bunch of texts and like is fleshing out his knowledge and like is like kind of like mentally speculating about like the relationship between like Gollum and the ring and like the history of how it passed into Gollum's hands, which does get into a little bit later in the chapter. But Gandalf's return to Bag End is like a little bit more
like immediate feeling.
Yeah, in both cases, he's paranoid and is it secret? Is it safe? Because he now knows the nature of the ring and knows what must be done. It's just that in the book that he takes 10 years to research, which honestly seems a little bit more realistic. I understand why they couldn't do it in the movie. But Frodo is just basically, he is living with the ring in his possession, gleaning some of the benefits of, or I guess benefits is kind of in the eye of the beholder, but he is like getting some of that unnatural aging.
Yeah.
He's also emboldened to travel a little bit more because he's in the possession of the ring. But
that could also just be he like heard
Yeah.
Bilbo's stories growing up and is like the rare hobbit to be inspired by that, sort of like Samwise.
Yes. So Frodo's just living. He'll be leaving soon. We're introduced to his friends. Drew, you want to take over on this?
So I mean, it talks about most importantly, it talks about Samwise, I guess, who is the son of the Gaffer. It seems like my favorite character is the Gaffer based on how much I'm talking about him.
They just got a really good soccer coach in that club in that town.
And yeah, he's the gardener of. He's sort of like an apprentice, I guess, to the Gaffer, who is the gardener for the Baggins. And so he's just like he's around Bilbo's age and is pretty good friends with him. And he's like obsessed with elves.
Yeah.
He does he sort of read as a Carl Weezer type character more so in this?
Oh goodness, I don't know if I would go that far. That's a little bit uncharitable, but
I don't know why he comes across that way. Not in an unflattering way, but
you saying he's also caked up?
I don't know.
Built like a blueberry.
I think it's just that he's got sort of like this one track mind about elves.
I would,
and he's like kind of the like.
He to me just kind of reads like a stereotypical like I want to get out of this town and see the world type. Like even for a hobbit, like he's like his version of that seems very dumbed down of like, hey, he's never been outside of the county line. Like he's very southern that way. He just reads as like a very like earnest and like an earnest person of simple pleasures who like does not infrequently encounter people from other places that are just traveling through and is like very intrigued by the notion of leaving Hobbiton, but hasn't really had the means or a reason to do that yet.
Yeah.
But I do see what you're saying. Like he seems he honestly reads a little bit more like as like a little bit more dense than he's presented in the movies.
He's sort of like the difference between like Ron in the books and Ron in the movies.
Yeah.
Of Harry Potter.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah. Just, I mean, like, we also are just introduced to him in this, and it's like he's not a particularly fleshed out character yet.
We also, we haven't really met them yet, but it does mention his other two friends, Merry and Pippin, or Meriadoc, Brandybuck, and Peregrine Took, respectively. You know, if you want their Christian names. But I am pissed. I am so upset. It also mentions two other friends that he has by name that are not in the movies at all, as far as I can remember. And
wait, really?
Yeah. Falco Boffin and Fredegar Bulger. Those are insane names, but I want justice for both of them. They should have been in the Fellowship. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Falco Boffin? That sounds like a Star Wars name. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, it does. Hey, they're their own main characters in their own story.
That's true.
They could have written their own books.
Hey,
once this were lost to time.
Once this enters the public domain, I am writing a treatise for Falco.
Nice.
But really the biggest thing in this chapter prior to Gandalf coming back is we kind of get the stage set for kind of the way the world of Middle-earth has changed since Bilbo has departed. There's obviously, this is a world, much like many fantasy worlds, where good and evil are constantly at odds with one another, and there's periods of peace and war as a result.
Yeah, and like, so Bilbo's, even though like the hobbits live in a very secluded part of Middle-earth, just like due to certain cultural practices as well as, I guess, some geography. But even still, they're like getting word from down the road and stuff like that, that like strange things are happening throughout Middle-earth, and that's sort of coincided with Bilbo's leaving. Not that Bilbo's leaving caused it, but it has coincided with that. And
there's people, dwarves, elves, presumably men, given how close they are in proximity to some like enclaves of what are essentially
like in Bree.
Yeah, there are just a 1-to-1 like human race
right
in the books, and like as they pass through the edge of the territory where hobbits live, they're telling these tales of like growing like evil. It's kind of like it's a little bit more nebulous of an idea. Like it's really referred to by the hobbits as this sort of like distant strangeness. Repeatedly of like they have this sense that things aren't going great. I would really liken it to like how most Americans treat our foreign wars of like, I know that like we are fighting overseas, but like it doesn't, I don't see it in my life really. So we might as well not be.
Yeah.
And I don't think they have a sense of
there's not like a sense of urgency really.
Yeah. Like it's not that they're unaware. It's just, it doesn't have any practical bearing on their lives yet.
Yeah. It specifically mentions, it seems like a lot of their, maybe this isn't necessarily true, but it does mention that more and more as time goes on, there are elves moving westward through the Shire.
Yes.
So that they can reach the Grey Havens, which we don't really know much about. But it's some sort of like elven paradise.
Yeah. We also, we've already talked about Sam, but he's at the Green Dragon getting a couple of pints, presumably. Did you catch that he was speculating about the Ents this early on in the story?
Oh yeah,
that's so cool. I think that's one of many examples of. Yeah. It's not even foreshadowing so much as like reminding you how like varied the creatures of this world are, and also
like the level of information to spread.
Yeah.
In this world, and like the extent that happens at all.
Yeah. And like I don't even think he calls them Ents by name. I think he just refers to like moving tree people.
Yeah.
And he didn't even see them. It was just like secondhand. But yeah, it's like I think maybe in the story it's understood a little bit better that like this is not a common occurrence. Like maybe odd things are afoot, either related to like the growing like danger in Middle Earth or just in general. Like hey, they keep calling everything. Hey, let it be known now, the world of Middle Earth is queer as folk.
It is.
They just keep talking about all these queer wizards and elves. Yeah. Hey, J.R.R. Tolkien, he's kind of progressive. No, I'm kidding. It's very obviously meant in like the English, like more just like strange kind of sense, but I did think that was funny.
Yeah.
So I guess this kind of takes us into Gandalf's long-awaited return, right?
Yeah. And so it said that like Gandalf was he for a while there was frequently, because he told Bilbo that he would keep tabs on Frodo.
Right.
And so he was doing that like fairly frequently, like coming back once every couple of months or so for a while, but then it ended up ceasing pretty much entirely, and Frodo was like, well, I guess he's never coming back.
Yeah.
And he just sort of accepted it at that point. But then Gandalf does end up coming back, and he's like asking about the ring and stuff, and
he now gives us the story of the ring through a conversation with Frodo.
Yeah.
So do you, I don't know that it's necessarily discussed in depth to this point in the story, or maybe even at all in the books.
Mm-hmm.
We are about to hear from Gandalf the story of how the ring changed hands over time.
Yeah.
Am I just dumb, or like, does it ever address why these rings were created, other than that Sauron made them just as a powerful weapon? Like, is it any more in depth than that?
Yeah, it's definitely pretty vague about like the way that they could be used as a weapon, at least as far as we've read.
Right.
Other than it just makes Sauron very powerful if he has the One Ring. It could be that, like, from what I understand, it's mainly a control thing. Because you saw how there were the 9 kings of men or whatever, and they each got a ring, and then they became the ring wraiths, which are like Sauron's biggest and most powerful servants.
Right. And
and that didn't necessarily pan out for like giving him to the elves, but it could have also been he was doing this at a time when he didn't necessarily want to come across as all out like evil to the other powers of Middle Earth, and so it's like sort of like fake PR, like I made you elves these nice rings as like a diplomatic thing, but really it's like he had other like sort of like keep your enemies closer kind of thing, you know? So it might be that, and like similarly the dwarves didn't really, giving them rings didn't really do anything for him because they just ended up getting destroyed by dragons.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think he was probably trying to get as many like ring wraiths as possible.
Yeah.
Is my guess. I'm not really sure though, and I'm not really I didn't really understand we don't really understand the process of becoming a ring wraith.
No.
You know?
Yeah, I don't think I've
it's just
ever
like
really...
they were given these rings and then they became...
I think it might address it later when they enter the picture in this book.
Yeah.
Because I do remember them being discussed as like just being corrupted in some way.
But yeah, it seems like they're like sort of the ultimate form of corruption.
Yeah.
These rings have the power to create.
A lot of and I actually appreciate this, I want to be clear, a lot of those kinds of processes are not really discussed in depth beyond just like a character kind of offhand referencing like the reason that something happened. But I think because the like level of technology demonstrated in these stories is like I think we would agree like broadly analogous to medieval Europe. They like their ability to understand that information is only as good as their access to information. And most people are still like hearing about this stuff through like oral tradition. Like there are excellent records kept and plenty of books, but it does seem like you have to have power and wealth to really access that.
Yeah.
Man, kind of regressive if you ask me. They need to have some free public libraries. But before we get into the story of the ring as we understand it, and to be perfectly honest, I'm going to kind of lean on the movie's introduction. Because Gandalf does talk about it, but like especially Isildur obtaining the ring is kind of glossed over in the book.
Yeah.
But essentially, Gandalf approaches Frodo. He seems moderately worried, like he wants to ensure that the ring has not fallen into anyone's hands. Frodo reassures him, but then Gandalf goes about demonstrating to him proof that this is not just a magical ring, because there are magical elements to this world.
Yeah.
It is the one ring, like the ring of power.
Right.
So, like any good scientist would do, he just throws that ring in the fire, man. But it's quite cool.
It is.
You can
cool.
touch it.
Yeah.
And when he casts the ring into the fireplace in Bag End, it reveals in glowing script the like a ring of Elvish, but it's not any Elvish dialect. It's the language of Mordor, correct?
Yeah, it's I guess the language of Mordor just co-opted the like script, the Elvish script,
and it gives one piece of this. I guess you would call it a prophecy.
Yeah, or like I don't know, some kind of verse.
Yeah, and we referenced it in our first episode, but just in full, it gives a component: one ring to rule them all, one ring to find them, one ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them. The full thing kind of explains the other rings too.
Yeah.
3 rings for the elven kings under the sky, 7 for the dwarf lords in their halls of stone, 9 for mortal men doomed to die, 1 for the dark lord on his dark throne, in the land of Mordor where the shadows lie. And then the 1 ring to rule them all spiel. And it just reemphasizes in the land of Mordor. So this ring just has a piece of that, but it is specifically referencing the power of the 1 ring and its ability. I assume maybe not in as many words, but to like bring in all of one's enemies and like for them to meet their ultimate demise. Like it is a all powerful weapon essentially, because not just of it. I mean, it would be one thing if it was just invisibility, but it's literally like it attracts them to the Dark Lord Sauron.
Yeah,
which is pretty wild. And Frodo is losing his mind. Oh my gosh. He is just as, I wouldn't call it whininess necessarily. He is so, like, he is such a fraidy cat in the book. He's like, I understand what must be done with the ring, but I'm so frightened, basically. He's just he's just a little lad who loves berries and cream. He can't destroy this thing. So Gandalf then he understands that Bilbo is familiar with how Bilbo got the ring, maybe even up to and including
Frodo is familiar with how Bilbo got the
ring. Right, with up to and including maybe even Gollum being who Bilbo got it from. Maybe not Gollum's backstory, but Gandalf proceeds to kind of outline how it came to be that the Ring of Power was transferred from Sauron to Isildur to Gollum to Bilbo.
Yeah.
So, what's your kind of understanding of that process?
So basically, like, first time around when Sauron was, effing S up.
Whoa, Drew! this podcast is rated G.
The armies of men and elves teamed up so that they could fight the forces of Mordor. And Isildur was one of the guys, like, sort of leading the charge. And he ended up cutting the ring off of Sauron's fingers, and he ended up taking the ring for himself. And, that's where we get the whole, like, cast it into the fire thing from the movie. And Isildur, long story short, Isildur doesn't cast it into the fire. He keeps it for himself.
Right.
But then the ring ends up betraying him at some point because, it's important to remember that the ring is sort of a sentient being in its own way that's sort of acting in accordance with Sauron's will.
Right. Yeah, so it seems to me, from what I understand, that Sauron is defeated in body, but not necessarily in, like, essence.
Yeah, it's sort of for the Harry Potter heads, it's sort of a Horcrux for Sauron.
So after Isildur comes into possession of the ring, Sauron retreats into Mirkwood Forest, which I believe is the same forest from The Hobbit.
Yeah.
Basically just, like, perpetually dark. There are some, like, kingdoms of elves in there, but Sauron presumably would have had, like, space to, like, regather his strength.
Yeah.
Before kind of, like, occupying Mordor and kind of spreading out and trying to, like, literally, like, conquer the rest of Middle-earth. But Isildur, just like in the movies, he comes into, like, the midst of a battle with some orcs. Which, for those who are unfamiliar with orcs, how would you describe them in terms of, like, their character archetype?
They're just bad dudes.
Yeah, they're kind of low-key problematic.
They're so talking about, like, corruption, they're supposed to be, like, corrupted elves. Because a lot of the, like, evil magic of Mordor is based on this, like, concept of corruption and stuff like that, which we can talk about at some point in a later episode, how that relates to, like, Tolkien's, like, larger philosophy and how it relates to, like, Catholicism specifically. but it is, yeah. And so they're basically just these like brutish warrior people.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're just, yeah, they're, like I said before, they're these bad dudes.
And it'll probably describe them in greater detail in terms of how Tolkien envisions them in
I
the
think
story.
he, especially in The Hobbit, he sort of uses the term orc and goblin interchangeably, but they become more, as the story goes on, it seems like they become more distinct
just
groups.
It might be helpful to think of them as some really messed up looking goblins, basically, but like brawnier, I would say.
Yeah, like tall goblins.
Yeah, like seem like capable warriors, but definitely kind of the same, like kind of elven ears, beady eyes, fangs, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
They're definitely frightening looking.
Yeah.
But Isildur gets into a fight with them. He is shot dead with arrows, and he drops the Ring of Power into the Anduin River. Those Cajun hobbits, they love their Anduin. No, it's Anduin, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
But that is where, as we got into in the previous episode, if you haven't listened to it, Gollum and his brother encounter the ring, and Gollum eventually comes into possession of it.
Yeah.
Bilbo wins it in a game of riddles and escapes, and that takes us up to present day.
Yep.
But I think a lot of the story of Gollum was somewhat unknown to Gandalf prior to his like in-depth research, and he had some like misgivings about it, but it sounds like he had to kind of speculate and do some research and talk to a lot of people before he kind of connected everything.
Yeah.
But he specifically mentions that Gollum has like flirted with like leaving the cave that he was in The Hobbit and like making his way to Mordor, like drawn.
Yeah, like after losing the ring, he like kind of sought it out.
And so it goes from being effectively hidden in the Shire to Sauron understanding that it might very well be located there.
Yeah.
So Bilbo and Gandalf, Frodo and Gandalf, but especially Frodo, starts to freak out when he realizes, like, I need to leave. Like, this is unsafe for everyone here. But he doesn't feel capable of necessarily, like, carrying out the destruction of the ring.
Yeah.
But it seems as though Gandalf wins him over in, like, imploring him to go on this journey to destroy the One Ring.
Right.
In the fires of Mount Doom.
Yeah.
But you know what? This whole time, what's been going on outside the window while they've been talking about, like, potentially the most important thing in the entire universe of this story?
Old Sam.
Well, he's just trimming those hedges.
Yeah, but he stopped trimming the hedges because he needed to drop some eaves.
That's what I'm saying.
He, I mean, his just, he loves hearing these types of stories and stuff like that, and so, yeah, he was just naturally drawn to start listening. But Gandalf eventually picks up on it and snatches him through the window and is like, "I caught you." And so he makes it. He makes Sam promise to go with Frodo.
But Sam compared to Frodo is, like we said, he's excited to see the world and see some elves. Yeah. He's stoked on this.
Yeah,
which I think helps Frodo get a little bit more. I think he no longer feels like alone in needing to carry this out, and feels like with some support he might actually succeed.
Yeah.
So yeah, I that more or less takes us through the end of chapter 2.
Yeah.
Frodo and Sam now know about the Ring of Power, its nature, and the nature of what must be done to save Middle-earth from Sauron. And I guess we'll find out what happens next when they embark. So any final thoughts about this chapter or the first 2 chapters collectively?
No, I think we pretty much covered everything that I wanted to talk about. Just the thing that really the largest deviation from the film that made it most notable to me was just that time scale difference. But really, it's just like a matter of like how the author of the book versus the filmmakers wanted to like set up the narrative, and they obviously are afforded different levels of freedom when it comes to pacing of stories.
Sure.
And so definitely makes sense, and I think that it makes more sense to do it over the course of time in this, when all the factors are considered.
For sure. It is striking just how quickly it goes from feeling like a slog to feeling very exciting, kind of.
Yeah.
It's not quite like, and this is neither a compliment nor a diss, but like it's not like a Tom Clancy novel or something. Like we're not talking like you have to stay up to finish it, but like I feel compelled to learn more about what's going to happen next.
And well, I'm sure we will get our own version of slogs. Especially, I've heard this book in particular is a lot of just like they're just walking.
Yeah, but I am excited to see, because one of the best things about the movies, in my opinion, is the degree to which the action set pieces are just like awe-inspiring and they're very action-packed. I'm excited to see what that looks like in the book, because I know it's not going to reach that level.
Yeah.
But like comparing the battle sequences to just exposition about hobbits, I'll be interested to see the difference there.
Right.
But yeah.
That
takes us through chapter 2 of the Fellowship of the Ring.
Yeah. Next time we will be covering chapter 3. 3 is company, and chapter 4, a shortcut to mushrooms. Very nice.
Love me some mushrooms, so I'm excited for that one.
Quite fun.
Well, thank y'all for joining us again on Ollie Font's Motorcycle Club. You know what time it is. Smash that freaking like button down below. Drop a 5-star review. Join the Patreon at the $999 tier. Hey, whatever you got to do. Show up, show out. Let the world know you ride with Ollie Font's Motorcycle Club.
Vroom vroom.
That's right. Bye, y'all.
See ya.